Let's go for a view. I warn you, it's not normally a sweet and jolly listen when he joins us on the programme. But let's go for a view from Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth manager. Hello, Jonathan. Good morning.
Good morning, Vanessa.
Well, no one can say you didn't tell us, can they, really?
There you go.
Did you say it was going to be a double dip?
I didn't use that phrase because I think that puts almost a positive spin on it. I've been using for the last few years the phrase economic depression.
Right.
You know, you keep talking about comparing to the 1970s. We are in a far worse position than the 1970s. Because in the 70s, we had 15 to 20% interest rates. Mm-hmm. We now have practically zero interest rates, and yet we're still experiencing no economic growth.
Okay, why not? Because I don't think. I think that question has defeated economists the world over. But what's your explanation for why that is?
Because we borrowed too much over the last 30 or 40 years. As households, as governments, as companies, we've simply borrowed too much. Mm-hmm. And we're now in the... we've had the biggest party in history. We're now in the biggest economic hangover in history. People need to get real.
Well, you say people need to get real. I don't think any of us really have got much choice. I mean, reality is being thrust upon us and forced upon us everywhere we look, whether we're looking at our children's career prospects, whether we're looking at our own, whether we're looking at our bills and comparing them with our earnings and what they were 4 years ago and what they are now. I mean, we are being forced to bite the bullet. Some of us are choking on it.
Largely, we voted for it. We voted for falling interest rates over the last 30 years. We voted for higher borrowings over the last 30 years. So now we have middle-aged and older people who are living in houses which are vastly over-expensive to economic reality. We've got young folk who can't get work, who can't get accommodation. Basically, we created it ourselves by voting for the status quo. What we need is a major change. The policymakers have us in a vice grip for the next 20 years in economic depression. Let me tell you, and your listeners, those who believe that we are better financially than Greece, Spain, Portugal, America are in cloud cuckoo land. We're in a far worse position than they are. It's just a matter of timing.
Well, I've just come from Northern Ireland, funnily enough. I was there last weekend. And our kind host in Belfast, Ballymena, Ballymoney and various other places around that area just kept saying to me, you see that house over there? You see that house? You see that pub? You see that piece of land? Do you know how much that was worth? Do you know? And he kept using the word worth. And I kept thinking, don't use the word worth, for God's sake. But he kept saying, you know how much that was worth 5 years ago? That was worth $7.5 million. You know, that was worth $4 million. And you know how much it's worth now? Answer, 180,000, 65,000, that kind of thing. Are you saying we're going to see that here?
Absolutely. Last year, 25 to 30,000 banking professionals lost their jobs. The same will happen this year because, as everyone knows, the City of London is the biggest financial centre on the planet. Now, when you add on the peripheral services, you're looking at about 100,000 high-earning jobs, which will be lost over 2 years by the end of this year. Yep. Those jobs will never come back to the UK. Believe me, global banking is now in long-term decline as lending is in long-term decline.
Okay, I'm starting to feel, Jonathan, I'm starting to feel as if we're aboard the Titanic and we need to take to the lifeboats. I mean, what can we do? Because, I mean, you can broadcast this dreadful doom and gloom, and I know you believe implicitly that it's true, and certainly the figures are showing that everything you've said to us so far on the programme in the past is turning out to be absolutely true and bona fide. Otherwise, I wouldn't allow you on to terrify my lovely listeners in this way. But is there any kind of hope? Can we build individual life rafts for ourselves? What can we do?
Absolutely. On the one hand, the policymakers, which is the government and the Bank of England, need to do an about turn. They need to stop bailing out banks because that's just seeping money from the masses, left, right and centre. We need to hike interest rates now and help people who've actually got money to have income that they they can spend. On an individual basis, people need to do whatever they can to retain their income, because I tell you, when they lose it, they're very unlikely to get it back. And secondly, with the wealth that they've accumulated, for example, in their ISAs and their pensions, if I were they, I would significantly reduce their exposure to the stock market today, because as far as I'm concerned, the market is on a high for the next few years. So this is the time to lock in those gains that they've made in the last 3 years.
How do you lock them in? What does that mean?
You sell your share funds and you move to cash within your pension or your ISAs and those type of arrangements.
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed.
Do not believe that the market only rises.
I cannot pretend it's a pleasure.
The last 13 years.
I can't pretend the pleasure is all ours. However, you're like a dose of Epsom salts and you're essential. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, you don't have to agree with Jonathan Davis. Jonathan Davis is an economist and wealth manager. You will see, though, if you listen to this programme regularly, that the figures do bear out his doom-laden predictions every single time. This is the double-dip recession that they hoped wasn't going to befall us, but it has. And I'm asking a very simple question of you, lovely listener. How are you withstanding it? If you're withstanding it, maybe it's knocked you for 6. Maybe you're not withstanding. You're not waving but drowning. How are you doing? That's the question. So everybody can give me a call. We've got lots of people manning the phones today. I want to know, how is it for you? Very simple question. 0207 224 2000, and we'll be back straight after the travel.